So one way that autotrophs can make their own food is through photosynthesis. Photo means light, synthesis means to put things together. So photosynthetic organisms put energy storing molecules together to store energy from the sun. Primary producers that obtain energy from sunlight do so through this process, photosynthesis. Photosynthesis captures light energy and uses it to power chemical reactions that convert carbon dioxide and water. Okay, they take in carbon dioxide and they take in water. Then they use light energy to make high energy carbohydrates, energy-rich carbohydrates, and oxygen. Carbohydrates include sugars and starches. This process also adds oxygen to the atmosphere and removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Before photosynthetic organisms existed on Earth, there was a lot more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and a lot less oxygen. But they actually changed the atmosphere. The biosphere had a major effect on the atmosphere, which makes it more livable, or which makes it livable for animals like us. Plants are the main photosynthetic primary producers on land. Algae fill that role in freshwater ecosystems and in the sunlit upper layer of the ocean, the photic zone, where light can reach photosynthetic organisms. Photosynthetic bacteria, usually cyanobacteria, are important primary producers in ecosystems such as tidal flats and salt marshes. Photosynthesis is often written using a chemical formula. You don't need to learn a lot of chemical formulas in biology, but this is one that you really need to know. This is the equation for photosynthesis. There are a couple that you'll need to know. This is the first one. So this equation says 6CO2. So 6 molecules of carbon dioxide combine with, so that's carbon dioxide, they're going to combine with water. How much water? They're going to combine with 6 molecules of H2O to form 1 molecule of a carbohydrate called glucose, which is C6H12O6, plus 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay, oxygen, an oxygen molecule is O2. You may already know that the element oxygen is O, but oxygen does not exist as one atom all by itself. It combines very easily with other atoms. And so I'm having a lot of trouble with my pen right now. It does not want to write O2. Let me try write it a little lower. So I'll put plus 6O2. There we go. Imagine an arrow there. So 6 oxygen molecules are produced when 1 glucose molecule is produced. We're going to study photosynthesis in more detail later in the course. So how do organisms exist where there is no light? Well, in 1979, not that long ago, biologists discovered lush ecosystems around volcanic vents on the deep ocean floor where there was no light for photosynthesis. Not only was there no light, there were very hot temperatures near the vent, very cold temperatures away from the vent. There was a lot of pressure with all that water on top of those communities. The primary producers in these ecosystems are bacteria that harness chemical energy from inorganic molecules such as hydrogen sulfide. So instead of using light, they use the energy from hydrogen sulfide. They use chemical energy instead of light energy. That's why this process is called chemosynthesis. These bacteria perform chemosynthesis, in which chemical energy is used to produce carbohydrates. So we still produce carbohydrates, but notice we don't produce oxygen as a byproduct in chemosynthesis. We produce sulfur compounds. We actually take in carbon dioxide and oxygen and produce carbohydrates and sulfur compounds. Many chemosynthetic bacteria live inside the tissues of certain types of worms and clams. The bacteria pass carbohydrates to their animal hosts in a complex partnership. We now know that chemosynthetic primary producers are a lot more common than we used to believe, and they live in many more environments than anyone expected. Some live in harsh environments such as deep sea volcanic vents or hot springs. Others live in tidal marshes along the coast. We will not be going into a lot of depth on chemosynthesis because, as was mentioned before, plants are the most important primary producers on the land, and algae are the most important primary producers in the water. Plants and algae both undergo photosynthesis. So this has a much bigger impact on most forms of life that we are familiar with. Once again, neither photosynthesis nor chemosynthesis can form or create energy. They only capture energy and store it in different forms, different molecules. Likewise, organisms don't use up, they don't destroy energy. When you move around or when you are awake for a long time, you're not destroying that energy. You are using it, but then it's being converted into a different form. Photosynthesis and chemosynthesis produce energy-rich compounds, but they do not produce energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can change form. So where does the energy from photosynthesis and chemosynthesis come from? Well, for photosynthesis, it's in the name. For photosynthesis, the energy comes from light energy. And for chemosynthesis, the energy comes from chemical energy. In other words, it comes from the chemical bonds in inorganic molecules.